What's up, YouTube? Welcome back to Redemption 46 Studios. I'm Nick.
안녕, 태영입니다.
Keith.
I'm Zach.
Silman.
You know the vibes. Y'all seen the picture. Y'all seen the thumbnail. Y'all know why y'all here. BTS, Fake Love.
Fake love.
A revisit
Fake
in a
love.
sense. So I was talking to Keith earlier, and I did some research. BTS's rock and roll song is kind of equated to Fake Love, Dionysus, Spinebreaker. We're going to have a couple different conversations during this video to talk about rock and roll in the K world. And also, would you consider... Yeah, we are. Do we consider Fake Love a quote-unquote rock and roll song?
No.
Which is crazy. Wikipedia and other places do. They consider it grunge rock or rap rock. Shout out to you two for putting me down with that grunge sound. Seattle rock.
Wait, you didn't know about grunge?
No.
Like
but
Pearl Jam?
I wanted to dive a little bit more into like who were the main components.
I'm about to say
starting
you've heard
things.
Nirvana and
Fuck
Pearl
yeah.
Jam and
Yeah.
what is it? Alice in Chains.
But we're
bro.
gonna get into that later on because rock seems like the hardest thing to classify in music because certain instrumentations and sounds can change the entire thing. Well, first off, if this is your first time on the channel, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, jump in the comments, and tell us how y'all feel about rock before we even get into this conversation. Also, jump on the Patreon. Today is kind of rock and roll day. And the Patreon is just going to be going crazy all of October, just, you know what I mean, because of all the madness. And also a clarification, too. When we said we wanted to give Jimin a birthday cake, that didn't just mean he was getting a birthday cake. That meant moving forward, every single member of BTS would be getting a birthday cake. We show everyone here love, and if you don't know that, then y'all just start in trouble.
You didn't get Hitman Bang a birthday cake?
Yeah, I know. I'm starting with Jimin.
He looked Hitman Bang reading this shit.
But this is a lot to talk about, and the reason why we really did Fake Love too is because we wanted this conversation to kind of touch the masses. So let's no long talk. We can jump into this, and then when we're done, we'll have a conversation about rock.
This one video where everybody was visuals was like, God damn, it was on point.
I feel that way a bunch of videos. Sorry.
It's like 4 or 5 for me.
I said I feel that way. Shit.
Hold on, here we go.
Shit. Woo! Shit. Do you feel the rock elements?
No.
I wanna be a good one.
I gotta hear it through.
Sasana Jonah.
Just for you.
Jumbo Bacosa.
Just for you.
I don't know it. Here we go.
Hey, put it by they suit. Oh, on the song. Nigga, what the roof? These are all the songs.
Woo!
What they got?
Woo! Woo!
What they got? Look at the ball. Look at the channel.
Angel.
My guy.
I ain't gonna lie, I got wrecked. This where it get real.
Yeah, because it's so much, it's more hip hop than anything. fucking visuals gods here. Visuals crazy. Gotta be tame. You can't be like clear, but like I can't be myself. Yo. 널 위해서라면 난 아파도 만족할 수가 있었어. 사랑이 삶만은 또 완벽하게 이 모든 약점들은 다 숨겨지기에 헤어지지 않는 꿈속에서 피울 수 없는 꽃을 키웠어. God's here. Don't show us fake love. Make sure y'all jump in the comments. Tell us how y'all felt about this track. And make sure y'all subscribe to the page before y'all even start talking to us. Because I don't want to be having conversations and y'all not subscribed. Make sure y'all jump on the Patreon too. I love this track. Track is fire. This track to me is more alternative pop, hip hop. I can maybe see if you want to stretch certain things out, while someone might think this is rap rock. Maybe.
No way, no chance.
No, it's not rock at all.
It's not rock at all.
Reason being, so, I think we're in this weird space in music where people want to make everything a fusion of things almost. And I definitely could see somebody being, I don't want to say extra. Well, someone being extra and saying it's this, and this, and that, when it's really just, this is more of a pop ballad.
I agree with you with the alternative pop.
Right.
Definitely. That's the vibe that it gives me. This isn't rock though. Like,
not at all.
I was listening to it because I'm like, we've heard this before, but I'm trying to hear where
the instrumentation and where they could possibly say it. Exactly.
Yeah,
you gotta listen to it differently.
I was thinking like, because even though it's been a minute since I've heard this song, I'm like, maybe there's something that I missed before where I'm like, all right, I can see where someone would see the rock in it, but I'm not hearing it.
Because it's super bassy, and I feel like I hear more piano in the back for certain shit. Like,
there's a guitar in the background, but it's not.
It's not prevalent.
It's not a lead guitar.
It's not a lead.
So I would equate this almost to like the closest thing to rock you could possibly get would maybe be like Stained, when they were doing like Outside and things like that.
Okay.
And Right Here Waiting, like it's not even all of those songs, because some of those songs have heavy rock elements and heavy rock guitar. But like during the verses, you might get like maybe just a little bit of acoustic, you might get a little bit of that, or a lot of vocalization, but you wouldn't get anything super, super heavy. In that regard, maybe, but the bass line itself takes it out of that rock. And not only the bass line, but the instrumentation of the bass line, because it's like drum kit. It's not live band rock or live band guitar, bass drum or drum kit. So like you can't even use that and say that. So like, no, I don't think this is rock at all. I definitely think it's no different than if a rap song had a rock sample. I wouldn't call it rap rock. It's just a rap song with a sample.
But it's crazy though. Now that I think about it, it's like I've encountered more metal rock, not metal rock, metal rap fusions than metal rock.
I'm a future Nick.
Rap rock.
I'm gonna put the joint up for him because this is considered emo hip hop, grunge rock, rap rock, and electric pop. Is literally kind of what they classify.
Where's the electric?
But see, that's my thing. Is like you would have it more pop than anything. It feels like even just like you listen.
Go ahead, bro. I'll let you
like the nuances to the song. It's just like
I don't even see how this got considered as rock.
Right.
This 808s, that completely negates everything from being rock.
I mean, you throw that in a rock joint.
It ain't a rock this way.
It depends. But that's the other part too. It depends on what era of rock you're talking about too.
Rap rock is a thing.
And there's
rap rock is a thing. 808s in rock is not a thing.
Depending on how you do it.
Especially program like this is a trap drum program. That's a trap beat program.
But that's why I'm saying. Like,
and I want to say this shit probably in like over 100 beats per minute. Let me see.
It's an 808 when they read their EXO Life and made it into a rock joint.
But that's why I'm saying this isn't.
Well, let me say, me personally, I don't think having an 808 and something is going to cancel out something being rock or not. If you still have traditional,
I think it depends.
X rockers
Because
rockers sometimes don't even know what they shit is nowadays.
Right.
What?
We just had a full conversation about it.
It's nuances, bro. It's nuances.
That's the point of this conversation, y'all. If y'all don't know what's going on, I'll get a little bit more once we get into it. But or go off, argue.
So,
with debate.
Yes and no, right? So, like, we all heard Diddy's "Come With Me," right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
What
That's a sample.
Exactly, but it's a sample of a rock group, but he fattened up the bass with 808. So is it still not rock? Yes, though it's a rock beat. Now there's a rock rap song. However,
there's 808s and "Come With Me."
Mm-hmm. He fattened up the bass.
You don't need 808s to fatten up bass.
I don't know what you need, but that's what he did.
Oh, I can tell you what they did. Stevie J is the one who did the beat. He uses Stevie J as a guitarist.
What does that got to do with the bass?
What?
Are we talking about bass?
Are you talking about bass guitar?
Yeah.
That's what that's not what I'm talking about.
What do you just said fattened up the bass? That's literally
like
what people use.
Part
Thank you.
You didn't say that. You said fattened up the bass.
So what do you call a bass drum? Another name for the kick.
What kind of kick? You can go all over the place with that. That's what I'm saying.
So when I got a pedal bass, is that not a bass?
It's still a bass.
It's a bass, but
so if I'm talking about an 808 and I'm talking about fattening it up, I'm not talking about a guitar.
An 808 is a digital drum, so that it doesn't matter. 808 can be placed anywhere on
but
any
if
type
I'm
of thing.
specifically talking about fattening up the bass of a song, clearly I'm not talking about a guitar.
Yes, you can.
Clearly, I am not talking about a guitar.
Okay.
I think it kind of depends, though, on like we've said before when we were having this conversation the first time. It's like there's a lot of nuances to it. So where you could have in aspects, you could have the guitar. That's why we asked, like, yo, are you talking guitar? Or are you talking more of the electronic side of it?
Or the drum kit.
Because when you're talking about fattening up a bass or kicking it up in a certain way, you're going more technical.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're going more to technology.
So, like, Come With Me, although it was orchestrated, although it is a rock sample, was taken into the studio, was mixed, and was added to.
I mean, but that's why I don't feel like.
But this is a
rock.
Only reason I stated it because that's one example of an 808 in a rock song.
Another thing too, Nas, because we're being Kiefer at, we were thinking that it seems like casual music listeners hear a guitar and automatically think something is rock just because you hear a guitar. Because when I think in K-pop, when I was like kind of doing my due diligence and was looking at stuff, it was a lot of tracks that popped up, and I even sent some to Keith, and I'm just like, yo, does this sound like rock? And he's just like, nah, that doesn't kind of sound like a rock song kind of at all.
But there's nuances to it, and I think that's why, like, when you say, like, when somebody would say, like, oh, this is a rock joint, no, because now you got to understand the nuances of rock. Like with metal, there's different elements to it. So you could have soft rock, you could have hard rock, and that's where when you go old school, that's where you get your AC/DC. Yeah,
classic rock.
It has a certain tone where this doesn't have those elements at all in any of those nuances.
Not folk rock, not anything.
Not a little bit. So like, I hear where people could say like, oh, the guitar is there, but like, yo, let's be honest. That's just because you put a guitar in something. That's like me saying, all right, I put a trumpet in this, it's jazz. That's not the case. This always, even when we first heard it, I never thought rock. I thought straight up, I thought more pop R&B type vibe.
Yeah, and then someone they told me like, "Am I wrong?" BTS and me and I, like I said, I was talking to Keith about it, and I'm just like, "Dog, I'm like, this is blues." You know what I mean? Which some people, might say is maybe a subgenre, but okay. Am I wrong? BTS, and I'm just like, that's blues. And when I heard Spine Breaker,
said that was like rock.
They consider Spine Breaker another like rock song too, and when I heard that, I'm just like, nah, this is giving West Coast bop. Just kind of like a Oakland type feel. I was like, I'm not really catching the elements to this. And like I said, this whole video, I put a little bit more context into it. Isn't like a slight on anything BTS is doing. It's a deeper conversation into just the evolution of rock and roll and what is it. Essentially, I was asking Nas on the side conversation, like who are some of the new rock artists, and what he said was basically, you gotta almost go to festivals to listen to people and see who are kind of in like that mid tier before the main acts get on. And my question was, why is rock and roll treated like fucking Major League Baseball, where people need to go to the minors?
Rock and roll, metal, the whole nine. Like it's a different nuance. But I think that's also because it moves. And we talked about this too. Oh, he's outside?
No, he's about to slide on us.
It's more so
In full makeup?
But
we talked about this too when we had the conversation the first time, was that those spaces move so different. Like in rap, you can have a rapper that's dope, be on point, drop it. We see it now with certain ones that come out. They got a look, they're marketable, they got a song or something that people catch on, or a catchphrase that's dope. Now we want to see what happens after that. They could disappear within the span of 6 months to a year.
Heathen.
It's a different vibe opposed to metal and rock, where certain ones just they last. There's a longevity in those other two that are just different than what we grew up in, I guess. Because I grew up listening to rap, R&B, and all of that. And even in R&B, when you look at certain eras of it, where you had a Luther Vandross, the Gerald Leverts, you have you have a Brian McKnight, there's a longevity there that you can come back to in a way that you don't have in like rap, which is way more marketable for like a Super Bowl thing.
It's just wild to me because it's like R&B still feels like R&B regardless, like a couple different subgenres. Rock just felt like a genre that had the most kind of subgenres in it, or just you can change certain instrumentation in R&B and shit, but it'll still just be like R&B.
Is emo considered like rock, or is that like a whole different genre?
That's metal.
It's metal, and that's still a subgenre.
So metal's
well.
just a subgenre.
Yeah, like but there's so many nuances to it, and those changes, like they change because, but like emo, going to school with a couple of these guys, they listen to a range of metal. Like, they listen to one. You had death metal, you had grunge metal, groove metal, new metal. You had these, and it's crazy because it's not something where it's like, well, I only listen to this kind. It was like, nah, there's stuff in all of them that you like. It's like for us, we're like trap. I like trap, but if you give me some conscious rap, I could sit back and vibe to that too. Like with metal, with rock, I think there's just eras to it that people cling to a little bit more than other ones, though. I could be wrong.
I think that creates a lot of the gatekeeping that happens in rock.
Yeah.
So a lot of old people, you see the guys with the Slayer shirts and the mullets, they'll be like, that's not real rock. Or because, or it's like, it's almost like the hipster type mentality. I like them when they were unpopular. Now that they're popular, I don't fuck with them. Or I never forget, I was telling somebody about Incubus. Like, oh, when you started listening to them, I was listening to them since Humongous Fungus. All right, good for you.
Right.
That was like 3 albums before they actually got big.
Metal, you get Lamb of God. Before you get Lamb of God, they would burn the priest.
And
like,
then you have people
different.
that look at you differently, even though y'all like the same things. They look at you differently from the time frame of when you jumped in, almost like Army sometimes, as opposed to like where you are at now. So we might be on the same level as far as understanding and love of the group, but because you came in at an earlier point, because you got to see them in those Seattle clubs, because you were in that area, or you got to listen to them, that album that was a demo album because you had access to it. You know what I mean? Doesn't make me any less of a fan, but that's how a lot of gatekeeping and people are in rock. I mean, you kind of see it all the time, and when there's something that maybe they like but that doesn't necessarily fit the mold per se, that's how you get these subgenres. That's how you get these little break-offs. Oh, well, yeah, it's rock, but it also sounds a little emotional or emo or whatever, or
I just looked
or
it
progressive.
Up, like, real quick, like some of the names is like math rock, southern rock.
Yeah,
it can get
it could be one little thing.
One little change.
It could be, and also the group can change mid burst. So Creed, perfect example. it wasn't until middle of their second album when people figured out, oh shit, they're talking about God. So they're not heavy metal like we thought they were. They're Christian rock. Wait, what? You
There's
just
that too.
you
Yeah,
loved them.
bro.
You loved them an album and a half ago.
Yeah.
You deemed them the next ones. Now all of a sudden they mention God twice and they're Christian rock.
But that's the other part
Lifehouse.
too. When you have
POD.
POD. Yo, POD. I forgot about them.
Youth of Nation.
Yeah.
Bro,
But they talk about a lot of religious
it's
and conscious
But
stuff in that
but
group
that's
too.
the thing too, is that in that genre it's a little bit different. Like when we were talking about it, I was saying like with rap you have more of a social pushback in some aspects. Whereas with metal or rock, it's more spiritual or religious. That's a different vibe. Because you could listen to one where you have POD on one end, right? And then you can go hard rock and listen to AC/DC, and it's a whole other topic of discussion. That's why, like, there are nuances to it that are so spread out, and it really is just like where sounds change. You have a band that comes in with a new sound. You had that with Pantera when they came in with theirs, and they dropped like, I mean, their music, they were hitting down south, but when they dropped Vulgar Display of Power, it was different. It was something that caught the music industry as a whole off guard.
Same thing with Living Color.
Exactly. You have
All black group.
You have a whole other nuance, and it creates a whole new space. Now, where it goes from there is different. But like when it comes down to stuff like this is why like when we first listened to some of the rock groups that was over in SK, it's intriguing because like it's young, and you know that. I want to see where they grow. Because you've seen how it grows here and it morphs into these other little subgenres of a certain thing like metal or rock. I want to see how they do it. So for some people to consider this rock, nah, you really got to do your deep dive on what rock is and its history of it, because it's not that. Even though you could grow and say like, oh well, this is a new genre. Yeah, but no, there's still no elements of what rock or metal is in this.
But that's why I find like the whole rock conversation just interesting in general, because the same way y'all will see like debates up here and stuff, I've heard these debates outside of us with things, and people just like, that's not, I love heavy metal. I listen to you know, what do you say, Fat Lip, Sum 41 or something else, and they be like, well, no, that's not really heavy. That's like just alternative and shit. So actually, you don't really like heavy metal. You actually just like alternative, like
alternative.
And then someone just be like, no, yeah, that's heavy metal.
So there are some groups that kind of blur the lines depending on what song. One I could probably give you is Three Doors Down. Depending on what album you listen to and what song, you might hear something very heavy, or you might hear something like The Road I'm On, you know what I mean? Or you might hear something like Loser, or, you know what I mean, like Puddle of Mud. Same thing. Like, you, depending on the song, it may cross into a different genre, but not necessarily it's hard to explain, because the group can be a centralized one thing, but the song might be something else.
I'll give you an example. For anybody who's, you know, you're watching this video, or, you know, you're new to a certain genre of metal or rock, if you want to understand the nuances of, like, the difference between, like, an alternative metal group and a heavy metal group, I would say, because they're touring right now together, look up Lamb of God.
Smack?
Not Godsmack. They're touring with Killswitch Engage. And Lamb of God, a couple of years ago, did a tour with Slayer. Totally different tone of a tour. But Killswitch is alternative. Listen to them. They have a sound that's lighter. Still strong, still, like, it still has that grunge to it. It still has that depth to it, but they're a different sound from what Lamb of God is. Some of this stuff you just gotta listen to it.
Electronic too sometimes.
Yeah, a little bit. And sometimes you just have to, that's why it's like it's different from like rap, where like you can decipher certain things because the lyrics are different, the beats are different. With metal or rock, sometimes you just gotta listen to it, two different types, so you can hear the difference, because there's just two different vibes between those two. That's something I would say to anybody who's like new to the space. Those are two bands that you could definitely like listen to, and you'll hear a difference. There is you can go back as far as you want with Lamb of God, and you can go back, because Lamb of God had not much from their band as far as like members has changed. Kill Switch, they've changed. They've had the original lead singer switch to a different one, went to another one, or came back with the original. So there are nuances to it. Their sounds changed, both sides, but they're still in their space. Listen to them, and you'll get a little bit more of an understanding of like the different tones of what metal is. Rock is kind of the same thing, but they both go through eras. It's just like any genre of music.
So I have more questions. So we know if we call a spade, K-pop is a amalgamation of like, you know, from at least from everything pop, R&B, hip hop and stuff. And especially like you can see like a lot of the Western culture has emphasized very heavily onto K-pop. I've always just wondered why like rock and roll seems like doesn't hit as far as the numbers go down there as much. J-pop I know is J-rock and roll is a whole bigger market I know, and the biggest groups that people always tell us in the K world are the 1OK Rock, the FT Island. Day 6 was one that people like kept talking about and stuff like that. And
Rolling Quartz.
We're gonna get into them today. Rolling Quartz. But even with them, the numbers just don't number to me.
Vix, Dreamcatcher, they're both rock.
The numbers,
idols.
Yeah, but I'm saying like the numbers, they don't number how other numbers be numbering to me. And it's wild because not like this rock is a pastime for like a lot of different cultures and like for a lot of different people across the world. I assumed SK might have one like really big rock group at least. And it seems like they tend to have some old heads who got clout and, you know, who did their thing over there, and then a couple newer groups that are popping now that do like a lot of rock.
It all goes down to their culture. I'm not gonna say that because you said we're gonna watch the video, so I won't like spill any beans. I'll give my.
Did you watch it?
The DKD?
The rock.
Yeah, I thought you did.
Yeah, I was actually gonna ask that. Go ahead. From a culture standpoint,
the whole culture and everything like that, of what they look at and what they're like looking for. Remember, we talking about something where the idol music is controlled by basically 4 titans and smaller labels and everything like that. 3 of those labels are from the 90s. And the music that came in there, now Sotaji did have like some rock elements and everything, and we even watched the video, you hear the music, and it's kind of like a steel drum and everything like that. But for the most part, it was rap. So, which was seen as youthful and still kind of fun. Rock is like you said, like baseball, purely American. And for the most part, and
it's like European groups.
No. I'm talking about like in its inception. The inception of rock is American. Yeah, that's the blues from the South and everything like that. Now, where it went in the 70s with all those groups that came over and everything like that, following the success of the Rolling Stones and the Beatles and everything like that.
Not just the Beatles.
Totally different places. The
AC/DC is Australia.
No, I said those groups came over after the success of the Beatles and Rolling Stones is what I'm saying.
I mean,
so that's how the 70s rock and Zeppelin and all those guys that came in, they all came over here after the success of like the Beatles and everything like that. But that's why I would say in its inception, rock and roll like generally is kind of considered like an American thing outside of other European bands.
Well, I think the other part too is with where it's come from and where it's going. You see it a lot in society in general. You see trends. You see it with clothes. You see it with hair. There's a certain trend. Some things come back around. Rock and metal is something that's just not. It's not going away. It doesn't get the type of attention that other genres do. I think for a lot of reasons, because of marketing is one. We talked about this before. Let's be honest.
I told you to answer that question. My original thought, as soon as you asked that, is I feel like there's a lack of musicianship in music, period.
Like an appreciation for it?
Well, an appreciation and people actually playing instruments.
But I told you.
No, I'm saying just in general, how many kids do you generally see saying, "Yo, I got a guitar. I want to play this guitar. Or I'm learning the drums and everything like that."
And that's why I said It's weird because I agree with you, but I think the opposite. I feel like this would be the easiest time in life. It should be more people that know how to play guitar now than 10 years ago.
More kids will produce music through a DAW, through a digital audio workstation.
Some of them people still know how to play the instruments though.
They will not play it the rock. They won't play it the rock way. And if anything,
I can't speak for it.
I won't say that.
I can't. I as someone who's produced obviously super small scale, but have been around. I go to like guitar centers and like chill with people and everything like that. I'm in a course right now when I'm dealing with people. And after we had the conversation, I kind of talked with the people in my music theory class, like, "Yo, what's up? Any of y'all like make rock music?" They were like, "Not really, bro, because that's not popping right now."
But let me. That's why I said
That's
like,
right.
when it comes
That's
down
exactly what
when
it
it
is.
comes down to marketing, you couldn't talk about the audience, because when you really look at a certain instrument, right? It's like with singers. If you're an opera singer, there's certain ones you're gonna watch and listen to. You're gonna listen to Pavarotti or an Anamafo. Or if you're in jazz and you're a singer, you're gonna listen to the Billie Holidays, the Sarah Vaughns. If you're a trumpet player, it's Dizzy Gillespie, it's Miles Davis. You're gonna listen to certain ones. I feel like when it comes down to, that's why I do agree with what you're saying, you know, because where you're coming from is where people are going, oh, that's not what's popping right now. Because how many artists do you know where you're going, their sound didn't change?
Dude, I feel like you can ask, like, the 808, you can ask certain kids that, and they know what it is off the rip. If I ask, what's it called? What's that guitar? The Stratosonic, something like that. It's like Stratosonic. The guitar that pretty much kind of changed rock.
Right.
They don't know that shit these days.
But see,
because
this is where, like,
Stratocaster, and it's also branding.
when you have to understand the instrument that you're playing, right? Mm-hmm. You go back, and this is where I feel like, because things in some genres, it's just about, it's not about the craftsmanship anymore. It's about just pushing out a sound in some ways. Think about some of the bands that we've talked about. When we've talked about them, they're not new. They're older. But there's an appreciation for what they do. Whenever you hear Pantera go off and you got Dimebag on the guitar, that's different. When you hear a Jimi Hendrix all these years later, it's still different. I feel like in some ways, yeah, you got to go with what your audience is in some senses. But some of the best artists we listen to, dog, they put out them. Yeah. You know, like Jimi Hendrix was against the grain. That was something else. You have sounds, vibes, all of that stuff. These bands that we remember. You
just hit that on the head, though. It's against the grain.
Right.
And it's right now it's against the wave. Now, I'm not saying there's nobody out there that doesn't play rock. Obviously, that would be a lie.
Yeah.
I'm saying as far as like the youth, nowadays you have more white producers into hip hop right now than ever before. Whereas it was just Rick Rubin. My point is, like what's boy from Europe, Murder on the Murder Beats. Hearing that name, first of all, I thought he was from Atlanta. Come to find out, dude's from Europe. You know what I'm saying? He's a big producer. It's another white producer. I forgot his name. And just like there's more people into the rap mix right now. And you see that. You see how blended rap is now.
But I don't. It's just that I don't think that should take away from rock. Just because more people are doing something of one thing doesn't take away from.
I would say give it time.
Else.
I would say it doesn't.
We got social media now.
I would say it doesn't. So like you were talking about before with the baseball farm system, it's a lot of people who do rock groups that they just haven't got an ear to listen to them yet. They're still doing their thing. They're still grinding out the look at Lollapalooza. That's a full slate of rock groups, and half of them are new. So, I mean, you can't say that people aren't coming out with new groups. It's just that they're not popular. And because they're not popular, not to mention, how many times do we all listen to
J-Hope and TXT were there.
Right, to 94.1. How many times do we listen to MMR? How many times do we listen to those record labels or those radio stations where they're blasting the music? I mean, so it's all in relative because, like, I mean, I got a playlist of music that I stick to. I can't tell you anything new that comes out. Not to say that there's not nothing that comes out.
Sometimes.
Right, so, like, sometimes. I mean, not to say that there's nothing new that comes out, but I stick to my comfort zone. So there are groups that drop every single day, and there are groups that upload on Spotify and Apple Music every day. And I just don't listen to them because I'm not comfortable.
Keith, I said the whole musicality thing is dead. I just feel like it's a false narrative because you know how many people are on YouTube. What if I told you it is a bump in 20% more like rock groups today than it was 10 years ago and shit? with the advent of you being able to jump on social media, you know what I mean? Niggas is on
more artists in every genre.
So much out there.
That's what
the
I mean.
music is grown because anybody can make music now.
But
if you
it's
have
all
a,
about
if you
how
have a
you
dog,
market
you can
it,
make
though.
music.
And it's also who you tag along to. So like maybe Aerosmith might have took a group that was a little under the cup, and they would have took somebody else. Now nobody's touring that way.
When you talk about, once you get into, it's like with Metallica, right? They had their sound before they went mainstream. It's all about, at some point, a bottom line. It's about what people want to hear.
And the moment they went mainstream, that same sound,
I still like them.
But people will tell you, "Oh, it sounds different." Does it? Does it really sound different?
Right.
It doesn't sound different.
But that's
you
why
just
I'm
think
saying,
you look at them different.
When you have an audience,
Oh, they cut their hair. Yeah,
and you're
it
trying
happens,
to,
bro.
yeah, like, but when you're trying to, but that's why like what Pantera did was so dope. But
Not cutting their hair, keeping it long,
just
not
going
conforming.
against and just putting some shit out where there people going like, yo, this is dope.
But I think that's more the rock mentality than the actual rock music.
That's metal.
Or metal music. Well, it's same mentality though. Like, oh, I'm keeping the long hair. I'm keeping the.
But that's the thing too.
Business in the front, party in the back, the mullet.
Is you have an audience where, I'm not going to say, I think rock and metal both will eventually come back around in a bigger way. But then you got to look outside of the U.S. too, because there's other cultures that are starting to add their own flavor to a genre like metal and rock.
Q.
You have it going. You could look around. Even you can go to the other side of the globe. Australia has theirs. We know that. One of the greatest was AC/DC. But like looking like Mongolia, the Who, that's metal.
Mongolian throat metal.
They have infused Mongolian throat singing with metal. It's just that you got to give it time, and they've gotten buzz because they did a collaboration with the Star Wars franchise.
Not only that, but a lot of their stuff is being talked about on YouTube. A lot of the actors are doing it now. It's picking up a lot of steam.
Different. But that's why give it time.
But that's why I find it weird, and that's how I think the conversation even started, is this is the most accepting time in music ever.
True.
This is the most accepting time in probably life ever.
Because you can't hate on nothing.
Well, essentially you can almost and shit. Or at least you got to do it in a nice way.
Yeah. You're a fucking hater. I don't like it. Okay.
It's the constructive criticism era.
If it was ever a time to market like a rock group, I just feel like
this would be it.
It would be a good time. And fuck everything else. Most of these, especially like in the K world, was it Lisa Man, Bang PD. It has been innovators in like K-pop who normally can jump on something before the sound is even here, or just know that it's a market available. I find it weird that someone is like, it has to be a market available between the ages of 16 and 24 for rock. What can we do to infuse a certain sound and get shit popping for these type of, you know what I mean, for this demo?
But you want to know what's something, right? Go ahead.
I do think that Bang and those record producers are smart enough to know that they are ignorant in that genre of music. So they tend to kind of, let me do what I know.
They were ignorant before, and then did they do diligence though?
That's true.
But that's why I kind of think when it comes down to
look at the music that they jumped at though. Bang is a rap and R&B producer. Slow Rabbit and P Dog, they all rap and R&B producers. Lee Suman saw Michael Jackson make pop music, and which was he saw the Thriller version of Mike, and the Thriller and then Bad version of Mike. Which when he came back and everything he put together, you see the type of format he was going for. This type of dancing, this type of singing, this type of performance, this type of personalities that he's cultivating and everything like that. A lot of that stuff traditionally goes against like the whole rock swagger, specifically like 80s or the 70s and 80s rock. Remember, rockers at that time in the late 70s, they were completely against disco. It was a dude in fucking Chicago or some shit. He a DJ. They had a White Sox or whoever, so Chicago White Sox, Chicago White Sox game. They was fucking burning disco the vinyls and shit like that because they hated it so much. That shit was so big that it impacted the disco industry.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? This dude, when I forgot the one disco dude singer, it's a black dude. He died. The dude was laughing on the radio. It's a Chicago DJ, but that's how big and that's how the attitude of rock was. It was it wasn't just some music. It wasn't just a costume. It was a lifestyle. And so even when you go all the way to the early 2000s with the new metal movement and everything like that, you kind of, even though you see a little bit more personality, you saw like Chester, R.I.P. You saw Mike Shinoda. You saw the guys from Good Charlotte. You saw Green Day. Yeah. You saw all of these guys like that. All of these personalities who had a little bit more flair. Than some of the older groups, and definitely more flair than kind of like what grunge was going for once it came in. Because literally, you look at that change between Nirvana, Pearl Jam, and all of them, and then boom, 10 years later, look at those.
But then
dawn of the 2000s.
During that time, though, there was also and we talked about this too. There was also an infusion of those genres with rap that was a little bit different.
It's some rockers that don't like that shit.
Yeah, I mean, because.
You're sullying their craft,
and that type of attitude is why how shit dies out.
But see, I can't say that only because you're not talking about one particular group. You're talking about a genre, and at the same time, these genres, fan bases are loyal. How many? Not saying in rap they're not loyal. I'm not saying that, but. In metal, the people that I've encountered in terms of like who listens to metal and rock has literally ranged from like kids who were raised up listening to it all the way up to like 80 plus. Like I've talked with old folks who are like, man, I really like this group. And I'm like, you fuck with this heavy metal, dog? Like, you sure this, because like, I could put on some jazz if you, bro, I like this group. Who is this? I always like groups like this. And it's like, word? And then you have, but because there's so many nuances to it, I don't think it'll ever die out. I think it's something that people lose an appreciation for.
It's a constant evolution.
Always. And when you have these two spaces with rock and metal, there are so many things to it that you can add. There are so many different tones. Look, we was just at the house last night listening to friggin' Disney remixes with metal twins to them. And I'm sitting back like, oh, Moana with a metal twist?
I'm like, appalled at you both.
No, this was dope.
I used to do that just in general when I found Fame Over Fire. They do like mostly like a lot of covers for just whatever new pop and rap shit is. They do like rock covers, and I would just look for that. I just feel like the argument of...
Is that the one who did Lucid Dreams? Mm-hmm. Okay.
I just feel like the argument of every excuse that we have for, I guess, like metal is really the same excuses that we have with every genre. We literally sit here all the time and talk about how like R&B is dead. Yet you can still find new R&B artists, quote unquote, or you can still find stuff. And, I always say like, I tend not to try to speak on things... How can I word this? I never want to be the nigga that be like, yo, like something is dead, and then 10 niggas be like, no, you just don't know where to look for it, or it's around and you don't,
right? And
maybe you're not listening to it, but here goes a link. You know what I mean? And it's just that, and that's why I had originally asked you. I'm like, well, send me the link to some of these young rock groups.
Things change.
Some of it is just
because I used to fuck with like Rixton and all this type of shit, but they changed their sound and everything.
But that would be a loaded statement though. The R&B thing, like I'm an R&B head. But I know what people mean when they say R&B is dead. They mean like the soul and spirit of it. Peak R&B is dead.
And that's not the
Technically,
case with
people still make R&B music. You still have guys like Lucky Day. Yeah. You still have Jasmine Sullivan. You still have Party Next Door in the Weekend. They technically make R&B music, but it's
some people say Rot Wave, Brent Fayed.
I'm not some people, but they.
But I'm just saying.
I know. I'm saying, but. Miguel, Party Next Door, The Weeknd, they make alternative R&B where they add so much more electronic instrumentation in there and so many different soundscapes that it's not the same. And they don't sing. Well, Miguel has the voice for it.
Sound like The Weeknd. It's like he evolved the genre.
So let me ask you.
Yeah, I like The Weeknd and Party Next Door.
So let me ask you, would you say that it's more
evolved is a strong word though.
That it's not dead? Would you say that just things change?
Niggas gonna sell, man.
Is that what you would say? Like,
no, I said the soul of R&B is not there.
But see, that's the thing. Is like a lot of times because they thought the same thing with metal at one point. They thought that metal was dead, but it wasn't. It's just that metal needed a certain thing, and they got it. But that's why I'm saying, do you think that when someone says it's dead, is it coming from the perspective of where you're saying the heart and soul of it, or you mean like the interest?
I'll tell you, this would be my last statement on R&B. This really what it is with R&B. The thing with R&B is, especially when people speak on like 90s and early 2000s R&B, and I want to throw late 2000 because we still had Dream, Neo, Trey, a bunch of people making true R&B music. The main thing is the 90s R&B sold you kind of a fantasy of what love was, and it's all super dreamy, and it was very creative. Music was creative, I'll give you that. The creativity is kind of that. However, the one thing I'll say that's changed is people's not necessarily looking for love music no more in general, or like the younger audience isn't looking for that 90s fantasy. They want to hear the stuff that Summer Walker is saying, the stripped down stuff like that. They want to hear the Brent Faiyaz, the debauchery, that type of talk. They want
toxic shit.
Yeah, the quote unquote toxic stuff. That's what they want to hear. They don't want to hear the 90s fantasy of, I love you so much I'll cry in the desert.
So is something dead, or people, or did the youth just change?
But that was the soul of R&B for the longest, that type of style. So that technically, yes, you can say that's dead because that's not what
that's what
people
makes
are on right now.
Artists so dope is because they're able to transcend that change. So when you have different generation from generation, I'll keep it old school. Miles Davis was able to transcend the generations. He was able to morph and adjust. You see plenty of artists where you're going like, man, if they would have just changed up their sound, they would have still been dope. Not if they would have stayed alive. It's like, yo, if you would have just changed your sound, you could have really you could have been a problem.
But look what you just said.
Life for artists.
That type of shit, that goes against so many of the older artists' whole thing. Changing my sound. And I don't agree with it. I think you should evolve. But that right there is what stumbled so many artists.
You also have some artists that didn't change and still had a second life. Aerosmith had a second life and didn't really change the sound too much.
But this is what goes back to Nick's question. When it came down to things changing, when it came down to stuff evolving in a way, right? Sounds. We talked about this. Bands talk about certain things. They talk about the tough things in society. It wasn't just the mental struggles or the emotional struggles. I've listened to bands talk about, we've heard everything from Metallica's Fade to Black all the way up to the social issues that are going on with governments, with school shootings, with you got stuff that happens overseas.
Jeremy was about a school shooting.
Right. Stuff that happens overseas that people may not necessarily hear mainstream. You hear plenty of that stuff. It's the audience. Sure, folks you may not see it on the news, but like you could do your research. That's the thing about metal and rock, is sometimes you got to do your research. And when you listen to what's pushed out, mainstream and other genres, not everybody, you don't have to do your research. You could just sit back and listen. It's not that it's lazy, this is just what you want to hear. This is easy to listen to.
Also think people are in their bubble. I'm somebody like that.
Exactly.
That's how I didn't hear these guys for their whole time, because I was in my bubble, boxed off from certain things.
There's so many instances where I've listened to a band and been like, I need to know exactly what they're talking about, because I like what I'm hearing, but I don't know what it means. I can look up the lyrics, I can look up the story behind the song, and then be like, oh, okay, now it's this is touching on this social issue, or this event that happened some years ago that I don't know about, or some historical event that this is like, oh, this is their perspective on it, or this is their way of telling the story. It's a way of just, you have to do your digging when it comes down to these genres.
I have another question.
And not everybody does want to do that.
Real quick.
Good.
To even piggyback off of that, there are some groups that don't even talk about social issues, but you do have to do digging on the story in which they tell within their songs.
Right.
So like Coheed and Cambria is a concept prog group, which means that the lead singer Claudio Sanchez, has his own comic, and every album is based off of that comic. The characters are the same. The story continues. It furthers along. I think they're on their 7th album now. And it's all connected. And you also have groups, I don't know where you would place them, maybe rock, metal, like Rage Against the Machine, who do give you it's tough because Zach is a rapper, but that group is fucking rock. So, you know, whereas they touch on the political, they've been touching on the political from like around the time of Public Enemy.
And they're not the only ones.
And they're not the only ones. But as far as outside of rap, they're one of the heavier ones to do that. One of the ones that are more well known. And they definitely kill it. Then you also have groups like, let's say, there was another group that kind of like has their own storytelling within
cultural
their own music,
like System of a Down,
right?
Yeah.
So like you might have something like what is it, Living Color, who might give you a story, but you don't really know what they're talking about until you do the research on it. It might not even be like. So they got a song called Flying. It's not necessarily a heavy metal song, but it's like such a lovely day to go flying, looking out the window, the sun is shining. What he's talking about is a guy, he's writing it from the perspective of a guy who was in a building at 9/11. Now the building is blown up and now he's flying through the air. But it's not written in a way where it's like, it's derogatory. It's like, shit, I had no idea when I woke up this morning that shit was going to go this way. And it was like, I was just asking that girl out and now she's flying past me at 100 miles an hour. So it's just like certain things, but you wouldn't know that if you didn't research the song. Or you have personal issues like we talked about with Perfect
Park
Circle or Tool.
Linkin Park was all of that.
Like same lead singer, but like I was telling you guys when we listened to Judith, it's very you might consider it like anti-Semitic because he's like literally saying "fuck your God, your Lord, your Christ" or whatever. Yeah. But you have to understand. You have to understand the meaning behind the song. Where I think I was explaining to you guys before. It was written after his mom got sick to the point where she was paralyzed. Meanwhile, she was a devout Christian, and everybody was pointing the finger at her like it was his fault or her fault, like she did whatever she did, and that's what she got. Meanwhile, it's like, yo, all you did was praise and worship and do all this other stuff, and these same people that you praise and worship with are treating you like shit. Like you're the one that stuck the spear in Jesus' side. Like you're the one that did something wrong. And he's almost writing like an angry child would to a parent. You don't love them any less. You're just really pissed off.
But that's why.
And that's what it is. But you got to do the research to know these stories.
That's why metal and I think that's why metal and rock are a little different because you got to do your own digging. It forces you to do that. This the thing that I love about it is like the one thing I hated as a kid was you listen to rap and it was an older generation saying, "What are they talking about?" I hated that.
Yeah, that's every generation.
Because I'm like, this sounds dope. What is your problem? Like, enjoy the music. But then with metal, it was like, I kind of got to research this because somebody older than me is going to ask me what the heck they're talking about. And the first time I played a Kill Switch Engage track in the house or an AC/DC track in the house, I had to know exactly what they were talking about. And when people came to me and thought, because older generations came to me and thought that I didn't know, so when they did come to, and I was just like, oh, well, this is X, Y, and Z, and this, that, and the third. And they were just like, huh. And I was telling them shit that they didn't even know. So, like, I think that's the other part with metal, too.
I think it's like that with rock. With music, I was about to say, I think it's like that with music that people are not familiar with. So I know I asked a lot of questions because my dad was a metalhead, a rock head, you know, whatever. That's where I got my listening from. So, like, songs like Games Without Frontiers. Figuring out what that was about. And he was like, oh, he's talking about racism. Okay, well, how did you get that out of this? And then he broke it down for me. He went line by line, you know, verbatim off the internet. You know, people do that nowadays, right? Yeah. You gotta hit the song right. So, but no, he broke it down for me, and he was like, you know, when he's talking about, when he's giving you the names, he's giving you popular names of the nationalities and how they don't fuck with the next person at the campfire and how they're playing like games that are silent and Cold Wars and things like that. He was like, those things are all in integral, but you gotta like, unless you know the story and the situation, you don't know what the song's about.
Another question, y'all. So it's funny Lo mentioned the bubble because I feel like great music, I need you. I feel like great music transcends bubbles sometimes. Sometimes you're forced to listen to something that's kind of not in your bubble because the masses almost force it onto you and shit like that. Like I'm pretty sure
at 3 a.m.
somebody may not listen to rap. Somehow Whoopty is on their timeline and shit with TikTok and the advent of other things. When's the last time a rock song has been in the top 5 for like Billboard or
Kings of Leon? Or
yeah, I feel like since Maroon 5 debuted or something.
Well, Maroon. I was going to ask that question, but this video already an hour long.
Are they a rock band?
Yeah, it's Maroon 5 because they're
something like they're a boy band.
They're technically they're not. I was about to say they're technically the most popular band in the world if you go off like YouTube videos and like how much the albums do. I know they. That's what I'm saying. So, but they're the most popular band in the world.
But that's why I feel like
they switch up their sound too.
I say they're popular, but they're not the best.
Huh?
They're popular.
I don't think.
Oh no,
I don't think the two are synonymous.
They not.
The two aren't synonymous.
They not the best.
I don't think they're the best.
I can argue they top 10.
But they have.
Depending on what we want to talk about.
They also have they have songs that people want to hear, man.
Yeah.
They have songs.
They're not just with ass, and then that's when you get into semantics, because then it's like, did that song chart? Is it a double platinum single?
Right.
What's
And
the
that's
YouTube
not
numbers?
I want to correct that because I did
analogy.
say this over the mic. They have songs people want to hear. They have songs that mainstream wants to hear. That's different because that's not the case for everyone else.
All the other older groups got
Queen is one thing, sure.
they got shit everybody
all
want to
we
hear.
have is classics.
They came out.
I'm watching Slipknot in October about to drop an album this month.
Where that shit was made.
Oh no, I was just
that was the sound.
Yeah, I'm using them as one example, but I'm just saying we not we're very far removed from Linkin Park and other what I mean.
Not that
groups.
far removed.
20-something years.
A dub seems a lot in music years.
And the reason why it's not is because what they talked
removed
about is
3 years ago for some niggas in rap.
No.
So you're talking about?
See, that's different. But that's different.
No, because you said the loyalty from fan bases.
Not just the loyalty, but the content and the stuff that they talked about. What Linkin Park talked about is so relevant today.
So despite the fact that they haven't dropped the album, you still think they're relevant because
Chad Bennington
of
has been going for how long?
Chester
Bennington. I've been sipping.
Sacrilegious.
I've been sipping.
I've been drinking.
I've been sipping. Chester's been going for how long?
A good while.
Years.
Yeah. Damn, has it been that long?
When I was in 10th grade.
Still relevant. Even more so than when he left. Even more so. You talk about what's relevant in society now, mental health amongst men. That's different. Getting help, talking about it. Every single thing that they sang about.
No. I think I'm the wrong person. He died 5 years ago.
Yeah,
I'm about to say.
Was crazy. I
was still relevant.
Wait a minute.
Still relevant though.
He died in 08.
14
Still
is crazy.
relevant.
I'm just like, oh
Somebody
my god.
died in 08. I don't know why I thought it was him.
Listen, still relevant. We've had ones before then.
Lord, I was like, that feels crazy.
I had to go check. I'm like, wait a minute. No.
Nirvana for crying out loud.
Well, anything
somebody died in
grunge is
08.
still, is still relevant.
Yo, and I know I was wrong for saying Chad.
Because we still got school shootings, and that's what that's what Jeremy was about being bullied to the point where you going for show and tell and blew his brains out in front of the class.
Lamb of God has a song called Reality Bad for anybody who hasn't checked it out.
The chart #1 on the Billboard.
I don't know because I probably have never heard it.
Lamb of God has a song called Reality Bad for anybody who hasn't checked it out. It is very relevant to the things that go on in society now. Very relevant. That's the thing about it is like they talked about things that are they still do talk about things that are relevant. You lose an artist to something crazy like that, yeah, it's going to be talked about, but it's relevant in society though.
2001, Nickelback. How you
remind me?
Jesus,
this is how.
And you know what? That's another group. That's another group that people turned on. Gorillaz. What are they?
They are rock.
Are they
alternative rock?
I think they're alternative pop because they do everything.
Well, Clint Eastwood is definitely a rock.
But see, that's one of the groups that have their hands in everything. They're literally eclectics.
Yeah, but that's why I said the thing about like I feel the same way with Maroon 5 and a couple other groups where it's just like I could play in whatever wheelhouse I want to play in.
Exactly, because you literally sit in the middle.
But that goes back to kind of what the whole emphasis of this is. Wouldn't you rather be a group that can play in any wheelhouse than be a group that's stuck in an old system that's not progressively moving?
Stuck is a strong ass word. You be using loaded words in your framing with stuff. Stuck is a term. What if you don't want? Not saying me, but some people like to do things a certain way. And they'll have certain parameters on themselves. Me, I believe in evolution, not change. Evolution. I think it's a big difference.
Then you shouldn't have an issue with nothing I just said. Then
no, I said that's some people will. Some groups are going to be like, bro, no, like, these are the parameters.
He literally just said that they kind of been stuck on those older groups and haven't really moved on.
Yeah, they're on the parameters. I'm talking about artists.
I'm seeing it in my head, but I'm like,
you're talking about fans. Yeah, if that's what somebody like, that's what they like. I'm not stuck on something. This is just the music I like. Stuck means I can't move. If something new comes out that I like,
then niggas need to watch their words when they say shit like, I like rock. No, you like two groups, nigga. If that's the case, then
you basing up at me. Like,
no, I'm just saying it. I'm talking in general. I'm not talking to you. I'm sorry if you feel it.
My bad,
but I'm just saying the niggas need to then change up what they're saying. That's almost like a nigga saying like, I like K-pop, but I only listen to BTS. No, you like BTS. You don't like K-pop.
Right.
So I just feel like people probably should change up, be a little bit more contextual with what they're saying with the language as opposed to saying something else. Then you know what I'm saying?
You're asking people to be sensible and logical. Nah, talking like that's.
I'm asking fans to do their research.
Yeah, you're asking people to be logical and do sensible things.
And the reason why I say that is because regardless of the genre you listen to, when it comes down to music, you should do your research on who and what you're listening to.
I gotta care. I'm gonna be honest. I have to care first.
You have to care. Yes,
I have to care
because I'll say this: there are some.
If something's ass, you're not researching it,
right? But when it comes down to what you like, and when it comes down, because look, I love certain genres. I loved metal before I knew exactly what it was and the nuances in it. I had to do my research. It applies, and I feel like that's where people get lazy. In some aspects, there are some people who can tell you what some artists had for breakfast on a day. It's kind of scary, but at the same time, you have to understand what and who you're listening to, where they're coming from with certain perspectives, how they change, because from one album to the next, regardless of the genre, you've seen it change. You have to do that, and I think metal and rock force you in most aspects that I've found to research.
Has the genre changed or evolved to you?
Yes.
Yes. But it also forces you to even go so deep as to
I was going to say, I said it's one
as to research the artist, because the artist's mind state might tell you more about the song than the lyrics. Air of the Night, for example. Don't know where you put this in your rock genre clip, on your bingo board, somewhere in there. But people are like, oh, did he watch a murder? No, it was a divorce. And he felt like his wife was killing him. But to know the story behind the song, you kind of got to know the artist. And now the song makes a little more sense from that aspect of it as opposed to just what you see on the surface just by reading the lyrics. So, you know what I mean? Like, a lot of these things happen. Like, you just kind of got to, or anything like Nirvana, like, you definitely need to know what kind of artist you're dealing with. Or Alice in Chains, because that guy, original singer, was going through a lot of shit. And you hear some of the lyrics, but on the surface, it just sounds like, oh, that's cool. But like, to really know what the artist was going through gives you more insight about the content of the music than the actual lyrics of the content.
But that's why I love music. Like, music is just one of those things I feel like 10 people could listen to the same thing. Music make you lose control. It can. It can make you happy, sad. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had to research with K-pop.
Well, that's because we actually do our due diligence. A lot of people,
I'm not going to say a lot of people. I think people do. I think it depends upon the genre.
Yeah, but I just find that beautiful in music, and it's so much more to talk about with this. We're gonna table some of this and like pick this back up on a couple other videos. I just knew if we did this on a BTS video, a lot more eyes would be on it, and people would be able to kind of jump into the conversation more than anything else. Subscribe, y'all. Y'all not getting fucking like an hour and a half content almost from other people. We're going to have a bunch of discussions on Patreon. We're going to jump into some other rock stuff, and there should be a bunch of groups today that we're going to jump into that we've never reacted to on this channel at all. Oh, no. So, yeah, shut up. We love you guys, and then we're going to holler at y'all. Peace.